Welcome to Forum 360, a global outlook with a local view. We are a nonprofit grant and donation funded program that depends on volunteer hosts to present a wide variety of topics. You can follow us on radio WONE FM 97.5 and WAKR AM 1590. We can be viewed on Hudson Cable Television in Hudson, Ohio, and on Western Reserve Public Media Fusion, Spectrum Channel 993, and you can find us on YouTube. To find out more about Forum 360, go to our website, forum360.org. I'm Pat Simons, your host for today's program. Ohioans may be well acquainted with the history of the Ohio and Erie Canal, especially the portions that run through the Cuyahoga Valley, and its effect on Akron, Ohio's development. But we may not know much about the lifestyle and cast of characters whose lives were enmeshed in the canal culture. In the studio with me today are two Northeast Ohio artists whose creative talents continue to bring renown and acclaim to our area. Artist Leandra Drumm and singer-songwriter Lori Michelle Kaner have joined together to produce a book and CD entitled Silver Ribbon Dream, People and Stories of the Ohio and Erie Canal. Welcome, both of you, to the show.
We're happy to be here.
I thought we could start off talking a little bit about your individual backgrounds, and then we'll go right into the project. Lori, I wondered if you could tell us a little bit about your background and experiences in music.
Well, I didn't start playing music until college, really late in college. Before that, I was always a visual artist and spent a lot of time drawing and was studying metalsmithing at Kent State. And just kind of happened to end up being friends with a lot of musicians in the Kent area. So at some point I picked up a banjo and just started playing, and it kind of, started a new path for me.
Of all of the instruments in all of the world, you picked up a banjo.
Silly,
That's really amazing.
Silly woman.
What inspires you when you are writing lyrics and tunes?
It really comes in waves and spurts. I'm not a very disciplined songwriter. I don't sit down every day and make sure I write something every day. It really does come in waves and spurts. Before this project, it really was just whenever something would, a phrase or a melody or something would just kind of come to the surface and bubble up to the surface, and I would just feel the need to sit down and pull out one of my instruments and write something. With this project, it was a bit more methodical and focused, which was really good for me to have a focus. And so with this project in particular, it was more trying to find stories that I found, stories and people that I found interesting.
So it sounds like your creative space is everywhere.
It's everywhere.
Whenever the inspiration comes to you.
It is. It can be washing dishes. It can be, just walking in the woods with my kids. It can be, it just comes whenever and wherever it pleases.
What other instruments do you play besides singing?
Just banjo and guitar. And then I have this weird instrument called a dojo, which is like a resonator banjo guitar. It's a strange little instrument. It's tuned like a banjo, and it's a lot lighter than a banjo. So that's why we bought it, because my banjo is really, really heavy, and after having it strapped on for a 2-hour show, it's heavy.
That's
it gets heavier with every song.
I don't think I've ever heard of that instrument before.
It's a strange little instrument, but it's good.
Well, I know that you are related to a fellow musician and renowned fiddler.
Oh.
And you are part of a band called Hey Mavis.
Yes.
Can you talk about these guys?
I can. My husband, Eddie Kaner, and I started Hey Mavis. There's some debate as to whose band it is. He likes to call it his band. I like to call it my band. But we started the band about 10 years ago when we were the artists in residence in the Cuyahoga Valley National Park. And for about 4 years now, we've had bassist Brian Thomas and percussionist Anthony Tadeo performing with us. And they're wonderful. All three of them are wonderful musicians, fantastic personalities, great senses of humor, and just a lot of fun to perform with and to travel with, and very creative souls too.
Since you spend a lot of time together, those are all good qualities, right?
Yes, when you're sitting in a van together for hours and hours and days, it helps to like the people that you're with.
Leandra, tell us a little bit about your background.
Well, I'm a local artist, and my husband, Tim Benninghoff, and I own a small craft business in Akron, Ohio. We produce pewter, etched glassware, stained glassware products that we sell to galleries and museum stores throughout the U.S. and also in Canada.
I read something interesting about you in a bio. You started out on the track to become an engineer.
Yes.
Our sordid past.
I was, in my youth, I was very good at math, and I actually had an interest in engineering. And our high school had a program for engineering, so I was a part of that and on that track. And I sort of call that my art rebellion. So that's the period of time where I was rebelling against my parents and art by being an engineer. But yeah, I was able to take a class at Akron U while in high school in the arts and fell in love. But I also would say that a field trip, which was really important, visiting an engineer for a day. I went to see an architectural engineer and a structural engineer. And when I was with the structural engineer, I was in this room that had a drop ceiling, nothing on the walls, and a low humming light. And he said, what I do is I study the density of a beam, and and I felt suffocated. And I realized at that moment that I needed color on the walls and expression, and that I was in my heart an artist. So I didn't know how you heard that rumor. It's out.
So where do you find inspiration for your work?
Everywhere. I'm sort of figure dominant. I love the figure, and so of course a lot comes from my parents, who are also both artists.
Well, let's talk about them real quick, because you hear the Drumm name and people associate a lot. Could you name the Drumm family and of artists?
Yes, both my mother and my father are both artists. My father, Don Drumm, is a sculptor who works in aluminum and pewter. And my mother is a fiber artist who also taught for many years, taught art. And together they both own and operate Don Drumm Studios and Gallery in Akron. And they've been sort of my, example of what it is to be a successful artist in the community. So they were great footsteps to follow in, I guess, and sort of my mentors in. Once I decided to go into the arts, they were, very encouraging, especially in the craft field.
Sounds like it's in the DNA.
I think so. My sister's an artist as well, one of my sisters.
Is that Elisa?
Yes, Elisa Drumm Van Ackens. She's a craftsman as well. And awesome. I do have a third sister, Tamula, who's very creative as well, but she teaches Chinese at St. Vincent St. Mary High School.
Its own form of art.
Yes.
Did you know each other before this project, and had you worked on other projects prior?
Yes, we did. So Leandra and I actually lived in the same neighborhood for 3 years or 4 years in Akron and Highland Square. And Leandra had contacted us because she was putting on the Light Up Lantern Festival.
Oh, yes.
And wanted us to perform for her festival. So I think that was kind of when we first met. And then Leandra was kind enough to do the cover for our Honeyman album.
Yes.
And after that experience, I knew that I wanted to do another collaboration with Leandra somewhere down the road. So when this project looked like it was going to happen, I contacted Leandra.
It was a natural. I thought perhaps now we could talk. We've been so excited about talking about your project, the Silver Ribbon Dream book and CD, as is pictured here on the table. What ignited this particular project? And it's solely focused on the Ohio and Erie Canal. So
Yes.
what got you there? What brought you there?
Well, really, the seed of it was planted 10 years ago when my husband Eddie and I, and our 2 daughters at the time, we were living in the national park. And, you know, you're surrounded by thousands of acres of woods. I mean, what do you do? We spent a lot of our time, most of our time outside, walking the trails and biking the towpath. And that's really when I first started having an understanding and a curiosity about the canal. You know, you'd see little segments of it just filled with green mucky water, and it's like, what is this? You know, what is the history here? And some of the signage that they have along the towpath, you know, gives you little snippets of little stories and history, and whether a lock got a certain nickname because of an event that happened there or a story that happened. So that really sparked my curiosity, and I thought that would be really interesting to really delve into the culture and the history of the canal. And so that's where it started. And then when Jonas and James L. Knight Foundation was offering grant money for projects that enrich the cultural history of Akron, or the artistic culture of Akron, I thought this might be a good fit.
You've just turned into Forum 360, and I'm your host, Pat Simons. Today our guests are artist Leandra Drumm and Lori Michelle Kaner, and we're talking about their collaborative project, Silver Ribbon Dream, People and Stories of the Ohio and Erie Canal. There's a lot of material out there published on the canal. How is this project different?
I mean, I think one of the things that's different about this project is it really focuses on the culture and the feeling of and the stories of the canal. I do not call myself a historian. It's not so much about dates and facts, and it's more just about language, the people, their stories, the lifestyle, and kind of bringing it more with a modern sound, and not having them sound necessarily like a song from that time period. It's more kind of unearthing those stories and bringing them forward, and making them relevant for today, both through song and through the illustrations.
I know that one of the reasons I was very interested in the project was because Lori found material that I hadn't heard about that sort of engaged the younger audience into learning about the canal. I was personally a little nervous when they asked if I would be interested in illustrating, because I'd never illustrated a book before. And I found that the material she chose really spoke to me, that we were a good fit for each other, both in the lyrics she was writing and the material she uncovered. So personally, I was drawn to learning more about the canal through this project. It wasn't purely historical, and it wasn't all landscape. It was, about some of the people who were part of that life on the canal as
Stories always make it so much more relatable, doesn't it? Rather than engineering terms. Where did the title Silver Ribbon Dream come from?
That was from one of the most interesting characters that I discovered when reading about the canal, Pearl Nye. He was the 15th of 18 children born on the canal. He lived on 2 canal boats with his mother and his father, and his 17 siblings.
Tight quarters. Tight.
They were tied. Their boats were tied together, and he, long after the canal had ceased to run, he really worked tirelessly to preserve the culture and the language and the songs of the canal era. And he referred to the Ohio and Erie Canal as Little Silver Ribbon. It's actually a direct quote from a song that he wrote that has 80 verses.
Wow. So that's the story right there.
Right,
It
yes.
is the story. So that was Captain Pearl Nye?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep.
And obviously naming something like that just is so endearing. You can feel the love he had for his life and the boats. I just, to call something, name something, it really tells you how you feel about it, I think.
And just a beautiful visual too.
Yeah.
And I thought with the visual element of this book, this idea of this thin little silver ribbon that was woven through the state of Ohio by hand.
Wow, that's right.
309 miles, this
Hand
little
dug.
silver ribbon. It was it really, for me, kind of set the stage for the project, just the title itself.
The book's introduction says that you gathered musicians and artists to bring the song's often fantastical interpretations to life. Mm-hmm. Now, the two of you are most remarkable in this project, but you were backed up by other artists and musicians.
Absolutely.
You want to talk about them?
Absolutely. They deserve the spotlight. I mean, you know, one of the most hardworking people on this project besides us was my husband Eddie, who was there both in artistic means and in administrative means when it came to the grant and, you know, the things that you have to write when you get a grant and the grant reporting. You know, just being there as an artistic partner too. And Brian Thomas, our bass player, who I mentioned earlier, and Anthony Tadeo, our percussionist, they really, the three of them, you know, I create a song and it's kind of a framework, and then they really just come in and each one individually adds just really beautiful elements to the song and helps to flesh it out into what it then ends
So you
up
end up with a full composition.
Very full, yes. And then we recorded at David Mayfield's studio in Canton, Sweetside Recording.
He's a local performer.
Local performer, local hero. And I've known David since he was a teenager, so it was really fun to get to work with him. And he was just a gem in the studio and in the recording process. And he played some and sang some on the album too,
So
which
he's there too.
was super fun. You know, he would, you know, tell me which button to press, and he would run out into the recording studio and look at me like, press it now, okay, press. And then he would, you know, play some crazy riff on guitar or something else, and then he'd put his instrument down and run back down and push the button again. So you know, it was pretty fun.
It's a joint creative project.
Yes,
and,
yes.
And speaking about the illustrations, we have one here, Leandra, that you did. Can you describe the song or the name of the song that you're creating for, and what you can tell us about that particular?
Yes, this is based on a character, one of the lovely characters that Lori was able to find, Miss Uno. Miss Uno was a showman, showwoman, what you call it. But basically, this is an illustration of Captain Pearl Nye in his elder years. Lori had found an article on Pearl Nye reminiscing about past years when he was a child, and he remembered Miss Uno coming up on the canal on a showboat, and her talent was that she would supposedly disperse snakes, train snakes within the woods or
Into
the
the
area
woods.
around the canal beforehand, and then she would play a mouth harp, which is a
Like a little harmonica.
and the snakes would come slithering up to her. And Pearl Nye was just enamored with her as a youth. Of course, the parents were like, "Look away!" But I love that this character could almost step into modern times. She had woolen striped stockings and boots, and a halo of blonde hair, which they called moss hair.
Moss hair.
Moss hair. Like dreadlocks?
It was like blonde, very poofy blonde curls that they would kind of poof out into this bouffant.
Oh, okay.
So one of the exciting parts was actually finding imagery from that time period and seeing that these characters existed. So what I like to do in my drawings is show a sense of movement, which works very well with music, obviously. So I listen to the recording and the song over and over again while I'm illustrating. And then another aspect of my illustrations is that it's a gift I think my parents gave me, is a sense of discovery. My mother used to make us dolls when we were kids, where you would unzip the King of Hearts chest pocket and a string of hearts would come out.
Fun.
So in my drawing, I like to incorporate little hidden details that help further the story. So, I mean, in this one, it's the knot, sort of his coming from the memory of Captain Nye as an older gentleman, and this, knotted rope heart between that Miss Uno. But
Each illustration, from everything you're telling me, really kind of draws us in and wants us to look at those interpretations. There's so much going on in there. And then you see the storyline, you hear the songs, and it all really comes together. I just am amazed by the way that your minds melded on this project.
yeah, it was certainly a pleasure to work with Lori and Hey Mavis on this project.
We're kind of running out of time. I just want to know, are there any projects coming up for the dynamic duo of Kaner and Drumm, or Drumm and Kaner? Do you have anything coming up?
I mean, we don't have any collaborations coming up, but, I would love and jump at a chance to work with Leandra again.
I as well, yes. I have really enjoyed this project and working with Lori and having the band, the musical aspect incorporated in the book along with the illustrations is just really exciting and a really different way to look at, our history of the canal.
Creativity is boundless, isn't it? And there's no borders there. I want to thank Leandra Drumm and Lori Michelle Kaner for their thoughtful, artful collaboration and interpretation of canal life and characters in stories, illustrations, and songs. And thank you for continuing to be a bright spot for the arts in Northeast Ohio.
And thank you.
The merging of these two talents produced a book and CD entitled Silver Ribbon Dream: People and Stories of the Ohio and Erie Canal. The book is a collection of original lyrics and canal stories. The book cover and each page are filled with illustrations that bring whimsical form and life to the characters. The CD's original songs celebrate the eccentricities and uniqueness of a people and lifestyle that existed for a brief moment in our history. Follow Lori Michelle Kaner, Hey Mavis, and purchase Silver Ribbon Dream and other CDs at heymavis.com. And you can follow Leandra Drumm Designs, found at Don Drumm Studios and Gallery on 437 Krause Street in Akron, Ohio. The website is dondrummstudios.com. Leandra's art may be found in galleries and museum stores throughout the U.S. and Canada. The Silver Ribbon Dream CD and book can also be purchased at the Don Drumm Gallery. A quote from Silver Ribbon Dream's introduction best describes the project. A silver ribbon of history that wove its way through the heart of Ohio, a piece of Akron's past brought brilliantly into the present. Stay tuned as we play Grain of Salt from the Silver Ribbon Dream CD. This is Pat Simons for Forum 360. Thank you for joining us and have a great day.
Sit right down and I'll tell you how it was. Forum 360 is brought to you by John S. and James L. Knight Foundation, the Akron Community Foundation, Hudson Community Television, the Rubber City Radio Group, Shaw Jewish Community Center of Akron, Blue Green, Electric Impulse Communications, and Forum 360 supporters.